video reveals the outcome of my daughter's genius Russian strategic bomber plan in the World at War game played at the 2024 BPA convention. Before you do anything, bomb that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the videos on the new World at War channel. As you should know from watching the previous video in this series, in the World at War event at the 2024 World Board Gaming Championships, Russia went all out for heavy bombers. Before we see how this worked out, we'll begin with a quick recap of the game, focusing on the European theater. In summer 1939, Germany declared war on Poland and conquered it. By a combination of gathering storm diplomacy, Axis neglect, and luck, the Western Allies gained hex control of Sweden. This result lasted the entire game. Russia took the Baltic states. In fall 1939 and winter 1939, Germany built up its forces, as did the Allies. In spring 1940, Germany attacked and conquered Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg. Italy remained neutral. In summer 1940, Germany could have conquered France, but this risked a pro-Allied French surrender level and would have allowed Russia to mobilize. So instead, Italy entered the war and Germany attacked north of Paris and along the Mediterranean coast. Germany rolled double ones in both these 2.5-to-1 attacks, incurring very high losses. An Anglo-French counterattack eliminated 2 Italian armor units and recaptured Marseille. Nothing happened in North Africa. In fall 1940, Germany took Paris and achieved a maximum French surrender level. The Western Allies had put diplomatic points in Sweden. But both Germany and Italy were so weakened that no further Axis offensive operations were possible in 1940. In a quiet winter 1940 turn, the only real developments were more awful rolls for the Axis, this time for diplomacy in Hungary and Romania, which both remained neutral. The only Axis diplomatic success was in Finland. Britain ended the year fully built. In spring 1941, the Axis obtained Hungarian alliance, but after yet another one-die roll, Romania only associated with Germany. This was good enough for Germany's 1941 attack on Russia. Germany conquered Yugoslavia to facilitate the movement of units into Romania. In summer 1941, Germany invaded Russia. In fall 1941, Germany continued its advance in Russia. The 1941 winter was harsh, allowing Russia to temporarily stabilize the front. In spring 1942, Germany activated Romania as a minor ally, and at some point also gained hex control of Greece to bolster Italian resistance. The spring thaw shut down the Russian front because of mud. Britain began to advance in Libya. In summer 1942, Germany attacked towards Stalingrad and the Russian oil fields. The US entered the war in Europe, and Britain occupied Cyrenaica. In fall 1942, Germany continued its advance in the Caucasus, while Britain brought up forces near western Libya. Better prepared for the milder 1942 winter, Germany captured Grozny and tightened its grip on central Russia, south of Moscow. In comparison, the continued British advance in Libya seemed very slow. In spring 1943, operations ground to a halt in Russia, while Britain exploited to the outskirts of Tripoli. In summer 1943, Germany launched its final attack in Russia, stretching the Russian defenses in the north to their maximum. At the same time, Germany withdrew in the south, and Russia reoccupied its oil centers. Britain took Tripoli and invaded Sardinia, preparing to invade Italy. In fall 1943, Germany retreated in Russia in order to strengthen its defenses in France to prevent a Western Allied invasion. Russia advanced to chase the retreating Germans, while Britain invaded southern Italy. In winter 1943, Germany continued to give ground on the Russian front, while the British conquest of Sicily triggered an Italian surrender. In spring 1944, the German retreat in the east continued, But the big news was a Western Allied invasion of Dieppe, which captured Brussels and collapsed the German defenses in northern France. By summer 1944, Germany's defeat was only a matter of time, as Russian forces entered East Prussia and, more importantly, Anglo-American armor units exploited to the outskirts of Berlin and Leipzig. In fall 1944, the Western Allies conquered most of northern Germany, while the Russians closed in from the east. The Allies almost conquered Germany in winter 1944, but they couldn't quite manage it. In spring 1945, the Reich fell. A nice result for the Allies, but where did the Russian bombers fit into all this? First, we have to look at the Russian air research and production in a world at war. Russia rolled well in 1939 and got a quick air general research breakthrough, proving the wisdom of the bomber plan. Russia got its air nationality DRM increase relatively painlessly, and thanks to having 3 air general research breakthroughs, it survived poor rolls for air range. Russia scrimped on air production in favor of strategic bomber production. Here are the Russian strategic bomber totals, year by year. It was funny that, given that the major focus of the entire Allied war effort was Russian bombers, in the actual game the Allied players thought Russia had only 20 strategic bombers in 1945, not 21. We all know what that means. Throughout the game, the guiding force behind the Russian bomber plan, while unable to attend the convention because of work, kept a keen eye on developments. Since texts were exchanged regularly, the simplest way to capture the flavor of the game is to share them. Any profanity in these texts has been censored to comply with YouTube's family value guidelines. Before we start into the game, here is the cover of the Russian binder, prepared by Eric Thobabin. The harsh 1941 winter in Russia was worth a text. Russia was confident at the end of 1941. There was some internal discussion of Russia's strategic bomber stockpile going into 1942. Russia's extreme plan of bombing its own oil fields came to nothing when Germany retreated from the Caucasus in summer 1943. The next crisis was the terrible Russian research roll for air range in fall 1943. The 1943 bomber inventory met with approval, however. The imminent use of the Russian bomber fleet raised morale, as did the 1944 Russian bomber levels. The first Russian bomber raid in spring 1944 devastated Ploesti. There were other targets open to attack in Germany. Reality set in when Breslau was bombed in summer 1944 and the Russian bombers were shredded. In fall 1944, Russia returned to Ploesti. Together with the Western Allied capture of most of the Axis oil reserve, the Axis oil situation collapsed, along with everything else. The position at the end of fall 1944 speaks for itself. With the German surrender in spring 1945, Russia turned its attention to the Far East. In summer 1945, Russia firestormed 2 Japanese cities. In fall 1945, Russia firestormed Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which ensured a Japanese surrender and a one-turn victory for the Allies. The success of the Russian bomber plan justified some smugness and confirmed that the title of this video series was justified.